The rain fell in sheets against the tall windows of the Han estate the night everything changed. But Nia Bellamy did not know yet that her life was about to be split into a before and an after. She only knew that the tray in her hands was heavier than it should have been, that her uniform was still damp from the walk from the bus stop, and that the housekeeper's voice was already sharp before she had even stepped fully into the marble foyer. She was told to keep her head down, told to speak only when spoken to, told, above all, not to look directly at the man in the wheelchair at the end of the long dining hall. Nia nodded. She always nodded. At 26 she had learned that survival in kitchens like this one was a quiet art. She was a large woman, plus size in a way that filled a doorway, with a full round face, soft double chin, heavy arms that could carry 2 full serving trays without trembling, a wide torso, a generous bust, and hips that rolled when she walked, no matter how carefully she tried to make herself smaller. She had stopped trying to make herself smaller a long time ago. It never worked. Anyway, what she had not stopped doing was hoping. Hoping that one day, someone in one of these grand houses would look at her and see more than the woman who reheated the soup. Tonight was not that night. Or so she thought. The Han estate sat on a private hill outside the city, gated, guarded, and whispered about in every corner of the immigrant service network Nia belonged to. The family name Han meant 3 things in her world: money, silence, the kind of danger you did not ask questions about if you wanted to keep your job, your papers, and your teeth. She had been hired only 2 weeks earlier, brought in through an agency that specialized in discreet domestic staff. The interview had lasted 4 minutes. The head of household, a stern Korean woman named Mrs. O, had looked at Nia's file, looked at Nia's body, and said in perfect English, "You will feed the young master. He does not eat for anyone else. If you fail, you leave. If you succeed, you stay. That is all." Nia had asked, cautiously, why the young master did not eat. Mrs. O had said only, "He is broken. Do not stare." Now, standing at the edge of the dining hall with her tray of rice porridge and thinly sliced pear, Nia understood the warning. The man in the wheelchair sat at the far end of a table long enough to seat 20. The chandelier above him threw pale gold light down over shoulders that were impossibly broad. For someone so still, his black hair was cut short and neat. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. His hands, folded in his lap, were beautiful and motionless, and his eyes, when they lifted to meet hers across that enormous room, were the coldest, blackest, most terrifyingly calm eyes she had ever seen in her life. Nia's knees nearly gave. She had been told his name only in fragments: Jin Woo Han. The eldest son. The heir. The one who, according to the whispers she had gathered in 2 weeks, had been the youngest boss the Korean underworld in the city had ever crowned. Until a bullet 6 months ago had taken the use of his legs and, some said, the last of his soul. He was 32. He looked older tonight. He looked like winter. She walked toward him because there was nothing else to do. Her sneakers squeaked once on the marble, and she winced. His gaze did not move. He watched her cross the room the way a hawk watches a field mouse. Not hungry, just aware. She set the tray down on the table 3 chairs away from him. Because Mrs. O had told her never to sit within arm's reach on the first night. She lifted the small porcelain bowl of porridge, placed the spoon beside it, and slid it across the polished wood toward him with both hands. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. "I brought your dinner." He did not answer. She waited. Her heart beat so loudly she was certain he could hear it. "It's a juk," she said when the silence became unbearable. "Chicken and ginger, missus." "Oh," said, "your stomach is sensitive tonight. There's pear on the side. It's cold. It's sweet. I peeled it myself." Still, nothing. Nia bit the inside of her cheek. She had been warned this would happen. 3 cooks had quit in 3 months. 2 nurses had walked out in tears. The young master, they said, had not eaten a full meal in 11 weeks. He drank water. He drank broth if someone forced it. He was starving himself in his own palace, and no one could stop him. She looked at his hands again. Beautiful. Motionless. Not because they could not move, she realized, but because he refused to move them. Something in her chest cracked open. She did not know why. She was tired. She was underpaid. She was, by every measure of the world, the last person who should have felt tender toward a Korean mafia boss with dead eyes. But she thought of her grandmother in South Carolina, who had spoon-fed her own dying husband every morning for 2 years without complaint. And she thought of what her grandmother had told her the day she left home for the city. "You feed people, baby. That's what our hands are for." Nia picked up the spoon. She lowered herself into the chair beside him, not across from him, beside. Close enough that her wide hip brushed the arm of his wheelchair. He did not look at her. His jaw tightened. "Sir," she said, "I'm going to feed you. If you don't want it, spit it out on me. I've been spit on before. My uniform's already wet." His eyes flicked to her at last. For 1 full second, Jin Woo Han looked at the large black woman sitting beside him with a spoon of rice porridge lifted in her steady hand, and something behind his cold face flickered. It was so brief she almost missed it. But she saw it. A crack. A single fine crack in a wall of ice. He opened his mouth. She fed him. He swallowed. She fed him again. He swallowed again. By the time the small bowl was empty, Nia's hand was trembling and her eyes were wet, and she did not fully understand why. Jin Woo Han had not spoken a single word. He had not thanked her. He had not looked at her again after that first flicker. But he had eaten. Every bite. And when she stood up to take the tray, he said, in a voice so low and rough it sounded like it had rusted in his throat, "Tomorrow." That was all. 1 word. She nodded. Because that was what she did. She said, "Yes, sir. Tomorrow." She walked out of the dining hall, with her tray in her hands and her knees shaking, and she did not know that Jin Woo Han watched her go. Every step of the way, or that his hand, the one nobody had seen move in weeks, had curled slowly into a fist against his thigh. The house behind her was silent, but something inside it had begun to breathe again. The days that followed, folded into a strange private rhythm. Nia arrived at the estate every evening at 6. Mrs. O met her at the servant's door, with a menu already prepared, though it was understood, without being said, that Nia could deviate if she wished. Nia always wished. She was not a trained chef. She was a woman who had grown up in a kitchen where love and food were the same word, and she cooked the way her grandmother had cooked, with her hands and her memory and a great deal of patience. She made him soft things at first. Rice porridge, steamed egg, silken tofu in warm broth. Then, as the second week began and he kept eating, she grew braver. She made him a small bowl of collard greens simmered with a little ginger instead of pork, because she did not know if he ate pork, and she did not want to guess wrong. She made him cornbread the size of her palm, sweetened with honey instead of sugar. She made him a chicken thigh, boneless, seared until the skin cracked, resting on a spoonful of grits. She was, she understood, feeding him her own childhood, 1 scrap at a time. She apologized for it every night. "I know it's not what you're used to," she would say, sliding the plate toward him. "I know it's just scraps, compared to what a man like you should eat. But it's warm. And it's mine. Jinwoo Han never answered. He simply ate. And every night, when the plate was empty, he said one word. Tomorrow. On the 9th night, he said 2 words. Thank you. Nia nearly dropped the spoon. She looked at him. He was already looking at her. His eyes were still cold, still black, still the eyes of a man who had killed and would kill again. But there was something under the ice now. Something warmer than she had any right to see. You're welcome, sir, she whispered. He watched her a moment longer. Then he said, my name is Jinwoo. I know, sir. Say it. She did not want to. It felt like crossing a line she could not uncross. But she said it. Jinwoo. His jaw moved, not a smile. Something quieter than a smile. But she saw it, and she felt it in her chest, like a small, sudden warmth. She did not know. Walking home through the rain that night, that Jinwoo Han had spent the 2 hours after she left, staring at his own right hand, until with an effort that broke sweat across his forehead, he had made his thumb twitch. It was the first voluntary movement his fingers had made in 6 months. He had told no one. He had simply looked at the empty plate she had left behind, and he had willed his body to remember that it was alive. He had a reason now. He did not intend to let her know it yet. In the mornings, before her shift at the estate, Nia worked at a small florist shop 3 blocks from her apartment. It was owned by a bright, loud, wonderfully nosy Puerto Rican woman named Camila, who had taken one look at Nia 4 years ago and declared her a sister. Camila was the kind of best friend who did not let a woman hide. You're glowing, Camila said one Tuesday morning, jabbing a rose stem at her. Girl, you are glowing. Who is he? Nobody. Nobody. My foot. You've been humming for a week. You never hum. You are a woman who does not hum. Talk. Nia rolled her eyes and kept trimming stems. He's my employer. He's paralyzed. He's Korean. He's some kind of, I don't know, businessman. Camila froze. Korean businessman. Rich Korean businessman. Paralyzed rich Korean businessman on a hill outside the city. Camila. Nia, sweetheart. Baby, light of my life. Do you know who that is? I know who he is. And you're feeding him grits. He likes them. Camila set down her scissors very slowly. He likes them, she repeated. Nia, men like that don't like things. They tolerate things. If he likes them, then, honey, he likes you. Nia laughed, because that was ridiculous. She was a large black woman, in a damp uniform, who reheated soup. He was a Korean prince in a wheelchair, with a jaw that could cut glass. She said as much. Camila looked at her the way an older sister looks at a younger one who is about to be very foolish. Baby, she said, you have never seen yourself the way other people see you. That's your only real problem. Nia did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, and she went back to trimming stems. She did not know that the young Korean man who had walked into the shop the previous Friday bought 24 white peonies, and asked, in accented English, whether the shop delivered to private residences outside the city had been sent by Jinwoo. She did not know that the peonies had been placed in a vase in Jinwoo's bedroom, where he could see them from his bed, because Camila had once mentioned, in passing, at a farmer's market 3 months earlier, that her friend Nia loved peonies more than any other flower in the world. Jinwoo had heard the story from a man who had heard the story from a man who worked for him. And Jinwoo, in the dark of his room, had committed it to memory. He was a master strategist. He remembered everything. Nia noticed, over the following weeks, that small, strange things kept happening around her. Her rent, which had been raised at the start of the year, was quietly rolled back by the landlord with a mumbled apology about a clerical error. The bus route she took to work suddenly added a second evening line that dropped her 2 blocks closer to home. The florist shop received a bulk order from an anonymous corporate client for weekly arrangements that tripled Camila's income overnight, which meant Camila could finally hire an assistant, which meant Nia's mornings got easier. Nia thought she was lucky. Camila did not think Nia was lucky. Camila thought Nia was being watched over by something enormous, patient, and quiet. She kept her mouth shut for once. At the estate, Jinwoo began to change. Nia noticed it slowly. The first thing was his hands. On the 16th night, he lifted his own spoon. He did it without ceremony. He simply reached forward, closed his fingers around the handle, and ate a bite of the rice she had brought him. He did not look at her. He did not acknowledge the effort. But she saw his hand tremble, and she saw the sheen of sweat on his temple, and she understood that he had been working at this in secret for weeks. She did not cry in front of him. She waited until she was in the hallway. Then she pressed her forehead to the wall and let 2 hot tears roll down her cheeks, and she whispered, "Thank you, God." The second thing she noticed was his voice. It came back to him, in pieces. Full sentences, questions. Once on the 22nd night, a low sound that might have been a laugh. When she told him about the time she had tried to make sushi at 14 and had accidentally rolled her grandmother's reading glasses into a piece of nori. He asked her questions, where she was from, who had taught her to cook, whether she had siblings, whether she was afraid of him. She said, Charleston. Her grandmother. 1 brother, in the Navy. And no, she was not afraid of him. And she did not know why, and she was sorry if that was disrespectful. He looked at her for a long moment and said, "It is not disrespectful. It is the first honest thing anyone has said to me, in 6 months." The third thing she noticed was his body. His shoulders straightened. His color returned. The hollow, under his cheekbones, filled in. One evening he asked her to move the wheelchair closer to the window, so he could see the garden. And when she pushed him, she felt through the handles that he was helping her. That his hands were on the wheels, that his arms were working. She said, carefully, "You're getting stronger, sir." He said, Jinwoo, you're getting stronger," he said without turning to look at her. "Because of you." She did not know what to say to that. She said, "It was just scraps." He said, "Then feed me your scraps and I will cure you." She did not understand what he meant, not then. She thought he was making a joke, though he did not smile. She laughed a little, nervously, and pushed his chair, the rest of the way to the window, and she did not think about the sentence again, for a long time. She should have, because Jinwoo Han did not make jokes. Jinwoo Han made promises. The 7th week of her employment brought the dinner that broke everything open. Mrs. O informed her that the young master would be hosting a business meal in the main dining hall. There would be 7 guests. Nia would serve. Nia would not speak. Nia would wear the black uniform, not the gray one, and she would tie her hair back. And she would keep her eyes down, and above all, she would not react to anything said by anyone at the table, no matter how it was said or to whom. Nia said yes. She always said yes. The guests arrived at 8. She recognized none of them, but she felt the shape of who they were as soon as they entered the room. Every one of them wearing the kind of controlled, watchful stillness that Nia had learned to associate with people who knew where the exits were at all times. Jinwoo sat at the head of the table. He was in a black jacket cut precisely to his shoulders. His hair was combed, his hands rested on the arms of his wheelchair, and if anyone at the table thought less of him for the chair, they did not show it. They knew better. Nia moved around the table with her tray. She poured wine. She set down plates. She kept her eyes down, exactly as instructed, and she did not look at Jinwoo, though she could feel his attention on her, the way one feels sunlight on the back of the neck. Then, a man at the far end of the table, a broad, ruddy, middle-aged Korean man with a gold watch too heavy for his wrist, made a joke in Korean. Naya did not understand the words, but she understood the laughter that followed. It was ugly. It was directed at her. She felt it land on her wide back like a slap. She kept pouring. The man said something else, louder, this time, in English, so she could not miss it. Jin-woo, really, the whale. In your own house. She fills the doorway. You are letting yourself be seen with this. The room went silent. Nia's face burned. She did not move. She did not look up. She held the wine bottle very steady over the glass she was filling, and she told herself, over and over, that she would not cry, that she would finish pouring the wine, that she would walk out of this room with her spine straight, that she had been called worse things in cheaper rooms. But something at the head of the table had gone very, very still. Jin Woo-han spoke. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His voice when it came was the coldest thing Nia had ever heard, and it was in English because he wanted her to hear it, and he wanted the man to know she had heard it. "Mrs. Bellamy," he said, "please set down the wine." She set it down. "Please step behind my chair." She stepped behind his chair. Her hands were shaking. Jin-woo turned his head, slowly, and looked at the man with the gold watch. "You have insulted a guest in my home," he said. "You have insulted the woman who feeds me. You have done this at my table, in my house, after I have shown you my hospitality. Do you understand what you have done?" The man laughed nervously. "Jin-woo. Come. It was a joke." "It was not a joke, Jin-woo, please. We have known each other 20 years. 21, Jin-woo said. "And in 1 minute, we will have known each other for the last time." He lifted his hand. He simply lifted it. And a young man in a dark suit stepped out from a doorway Nia had not noticed, and crossed to the table and placed a single folded piece of paper in front of the man with the gold watch. The man opened it, his face drained of all color. "Your shipping contracts with the port," Jin-woo said quietly, "are now mine. Your import license, which was renewed last week through a friend of mine at the ministry, has been revoked this morning. Your daughter's engagement to the son of the vice minister will be quietly cancelled by tomorrow evening. Your wife, who I understand has been kind to Mrs. Bellamy at a public market once, will retain her allowance from me personally because she has behaved with more decency than you. You will leave my house now. You will not return. If I hear you have spoken Mrs. Bellamy's name in any room in this city, I will take everything else. Do you understand?" The man opened his mouth. Jin-woo said, "Do you understand?" The man nodded. He stood. He left. He did not take his coat. The room stayed silent. The other guests did not move. Naya stood behind Jin-woo's chair with her hands pressed flat against her uniform, and her heart beating so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Riel. Jin-woo turned his head again slightly, so that he could see her from the corner of his eye. "Mrs. Bellamy," he said, in a voice much softer now. "Please sit, sir. I can't. Please sit." The young man in the dark suit was already there. He pulled out the chair beside Jin-woo, the chair no one had ever sat in, and Nia lowered herself into it, because her knees would not hold her any longer. Jin-woo said to the table at large, "Mrs. Bellamy is my guest. For the remainder of the evening, Mrs. Bellamy will be served. Mrs. Bellamy will be spoken to with respect or not spoken to at all. Are there any questions?" There were no questions. The rest of the dinner passed as if in a dream. Nia ate almost nothing. She could not taste it. She could feel Jin-woo's hand at one point brush the back of her wrist under the table, deliberately, briefly, and then withdraw. And she understood, in that single touch, everything Camilla had been trying to tell her for weeks. He liked her. He liked her. He liked her the way a man like him liked things, which was completely, permanently, and with the full weight of his empire behind it. She did not sleep that night. The young man in the dark suit was named Song. He was Jin Woo's oldest friend, his consigliere, the only person alive who could tease Jin Woo Han without dying for it, and he found Nia the next morning at the florist shop with 2 coffees in his hands and an expression of unmistakable amusement on his face. "Miss Bellamy," he said, "may I sit? You're one of his, I am his." She sat down across from him. Camilla hovered behind the counter, pretending to trim stems. Sang set the coffee in front of her. "He does not know I am here. He would be extremely displeased. I have come anyway because I have watched him for 20 years, and I owe him this, owe him what a woman who understands what he is doing." Nia's hands closed around the coffee cup. Sang smiled a small, dry smile. "6 months ago, my brother, which is what he is to me, was shot 4 times in a warehouse by a man who worked for our largest rival. He should have died. He did not. Because he is stubborn, and because I got to him in time, he lost the use of his legs. The doctor said it was partially neurological and partially will. He would walk again if he wanted to walk again. He did not want to. He wanted to die quietly in a chair and be forgotten, because he believed, in his heart, that he had built an empire that had nothing worth living for inside it." Nia's eyes filled. "He stopped eating," Sang continued. 3 cooks quit. 2 nurses cried. His mother came from Seoul and left in 3 days because she could not bear to watch. Then a woman from an agency arrived with a bowl of rice porridge and told him, and I quote from the security footage which I have watched perhaps 70 times, that she had been spit on before and her uniform was already wet. Nia laughed wetly. "Oh God! He ate. He has eaten every night since. He has moved his hand. He has moved his arm. Yesterday morning, before your dinner, he stood briefly, for the first time in 6 months, holding the bars in his physical therapy room. And he did it because he intended to walk toward you at some point in his life, and he refused to do it in a chair. He has told no one. I am telling you. Because you should know what you are holding." Nia could not speak. Sang leaned forward. "There is one more thing, Miss Bellamy, and it is the reason I have come. Tell me. The man he humiliated last night was not simply a rude business associate. He was the last remaining lieutenant of the organization that shot Jinwoo 6 months ago. Jinwoo has spent the last half-year, from his chair, quietly, patiently, and with great care, dismantling that organization piece by piece. Last night was the final piece. It is finished. But the head of that organization is a man named Kwon, and Kwon is not stupid. Kwon has understood over the last several weeks that something has changed in Jinwoo. Kwon has understood that Jinwoo has a reason to live again. And Kwon, if he wishes to hurt Jinwoo in the only way that is left to him, will look for that reason." Nia went cold. "Me," she whispered. "You," Sang said. "I have men watching you already. You will not see them. You will not be harmed. But I wanted you to know, because I believe you deserve to know, and because Jinwoo would tie himself in knots for a week before telling you, and I do not have that kind of patience." Nia set the coffee down. Her hands were steady now. She did not know where the steadiness was coming from. "What do I do?" she said. "You go to work tonight. You feed him. You act as if nothing has changed. And if anything ever happens, if anyone ever approaches you, you say one word out loud. You say the word black. You say it in any language, in any tone, at any volume. There are microphones you cannot see. We will come." "I understand." Sang stood. He inclined his head to her very slightly. A small, formal bow. Miss Bellamy. I have not liked a woman my brother has cared about in 20 years. I like you. Please do not die. She laughed because she did not know what else to do. I'll try. She went to work that night. She fed Jinwoo. She did not tell him what she knew. He watched her more closely than usual, but he did not ask. She lasted 3 days before Kwon came for her. It happened on a Thursday evening. She was walking from the bus stop to the estate, umbrella in one hand, tote bag in the other, and a black van slowed at the curb beside her. The side door opened. A hand reached out. She had time to say one word, black. Then she was in the van, and the door closed, and a cloth pressed over her mouth, and the world went dark. She woke up in a warehouse. Her wrists were bound in front of her, not behind, which she registered even in her fear as a mercy. Her ankles were free. She was seated on a folding chair on a concrete floor. The warehouse was dim, echoing, and smelled of oil and old rain. 3 men stood near her. A fourth, older, in a dark coat, sat across from her on another folding chair. He was smoking. Miss Bellamy, he said. I apologize for the manner of your arrival. My name is Kwon. I believe our mutual friend has mentioned me. He hasn't, he should have. Kwon smiled without warmth. I do not intend to harm you, Miss Bellamy. I intend only to keep you here until Jinwoo Han arrives to collect you. He will come. He will come without his men, because I have made that a condition, and because he is a proud man who believes he can walk into a room alone and leave it alone. He will be wrong. When he is dead, I will release you. You have my word. It is a strange word, but it is mine. Nia's mouth was dry. You don't know him, she said quietly. I have known him for 20 years. You've known his face. You've never known him. He's not coming alone. Kwon smiled again. We will see. Miss Bellamy, we will see. They waited. Nia waited. She counted her breaths. She counted the pipes in the ceiling. She counted the number of men she could see, which was 5, then 6, then 7, as more filtered in from side doors. She thought about Camilla. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about Jinwoo's hand, brushing her wrist under the dinner table. She thought, with a clarity that surprised her, that she was not afraid to die, but she was extremely, powerfully, unwillingly afraid to die. Without telling him that she loved him. Because she did. She had known it for weeks. She had simply not had the courage. She lifted her head. Mr. Gwon, she said. Yes, Miss Bellamy. You should leave now, while you still can. He laughed. He turned to one of his men. That was when the lights went out. Not all of them. Just the ones over Kwon and his men. The light over Nia stayed on. It was the last thing she noticed before she understood, with a cold thrill down her spine, that the entire warehouse had been prepared for this. A voice spoke from the darkness. It was Sang's voice. It was in Korean. It was calm. Kwon's men reached for their weapons. They did not get to use them. Nia did not see everything that happened next. She saw shapes moving in the shadows, fast, disciplined, silent. She heard the muted sounds of bodies being taken down, one by one, without a single shot fired, because Jinwoo Han did not permit gunfire in a room where she was seated. She heard Gwon shout once. She heard Gwon go quiet. And then, from the darkness at the far end of the warehouse, she heard footsteps. Real footsteps. 2 feet. Walking. Jinwoo Han walked into the light. He was thinner than he had been 6 months ago, and he leaned, slightly, on a black cane in his right hand, but he was standing, and he was walking, and he crossed the warehouse floor toward her with the kind of controlled, deliberate stride that Nia understood. In that moment he had been practicing every night after she left, in secret, for weeks. He walked to her chair. He knelt in front of her slowly, because kneeling was still hard. And he took her bound wrists in his hands, and he cut the ties with a small blade Sang handed him from the shadows. "Nia," he said, "Jinwoo. Are you hurt? No. Did they touch you? No." He closed his eyes. He pressed his forehead very briefly to her bound and now unbound wrists. When he lifted his head, his eyes were wet, and she had never in her life expected to see Jinwoo Han's eyes wet, and it broke something open in her that she did not want to close again. "I am sorry," he said. "I brought this to you. I should have told you what I was doing. I should have told you what you were to me. I told myself I would tell you when I could walk to you. I waited too long. You're walking now." "Yes." "Then tell me now." He looked at her a long moment. Then he said in a voice that did not tremble, though everything else in him seemed to, "I have loved you since the second bite of the porridge. I have arranged your rent, your bus route, your friends' flowers, and the peonies in my bedroom which I stare at when I cannot sleep. I bought the building your florist shop is in, so no one can ever raise Camilla's rent again. I bought the hospital your brother's ship docks near, so if he is ever hurt, he will be treated by the best surgeons in the country, and he will not know why. I have watched you every night for 2 months, and I have not touched you, because you did not know, and I would not touch a woman who did not know. You know now, Nia Bellamy. Feed me your scraps and I will cure the world for you. Marry me." The warehouse was silent. Nia looked at him. His hair was slightly wet from the rain outside. His jaw was still sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes were no longer cold. His hand, holding hers, was warm and steady and alive. He kissed her wrists, he kissed her palms. He did not kiss her mouth, not in that warehouse, not in front of his men, because Jinwoo Han was a private man about the woman he loved. He stood slowly, and he held out his hand. And she took it, and he walked her out of the warehouse and into the rain and into the black car that was waiting. And Sang, standing by the door, said only, "Finally," and closed the door behind them. Kwon did not survive the night. Nia did not ask what had happened to him. Jinwoo did not tell her. Some things, she understood, were not hers to carry. He would carry them, so that she did not have to. That was the deal, unspoken, between a man like him and a woman like her, and she accepted it, because she had grown, over the last 2 months, into a woman who could accept being loved without apologizing for it. 6 months later, on a warm evening, in early autumn, the Han estate opened its gates for the first public event in its history. The garden had been transformed. White peonies filled every arch. Lanterns hung from every tree. 200 guests, a careful mixture of both worlds Jinwoo had ever known, stood in the soft grass and watched a large, beautiful, radiant black woman in an ivory gown walk down a long aisle on the arm of her brother in his navy dress uniform. Nia's grandmother was in the front row. She was crying. Camilla, at her side, was crying harder. Mrs. O, who had learned, over 6 months, to love Nia the way an aunt loves a niece, stood very straight and pretended she was not crying at all. At the end of the aisle, Jinwoo Han waited. He was standing. He had walked to the altar himself. He did not use the cane anymore, though it stood, respectfully, at Sang's side, because Sang carried it for him in case he ever needed it, which he almost never did now. He wore a black suit. His hands were folded in front of him. His eyes, when they met hers across the length of the aisle, were no longer winter. They were a summer sky. Nia reached him. Her brother stepped back. Jinwoo took both of her hands in his. He said softly, so that only she could hear. You still fill the doorway. She laughed. I know. It is the most beautiful doorway I have ever seen. They were married in front of 200 witnesses. They exchanged simple rings. Jinwoo, when it was his turn to speak, turned to face the crowd instead of only her, and he said, in a voice that carried, "This woman fed me when I refused to eat. This woman spoke to me when I refused to speak. This woman walked into my house when everyone else in it had given up on me. And she called what she brought me scraps. And she cured me with them. She will be, from tonight, the head of the Bellamy Han Foundation, which will feed 20,000 children in this city every year for as long as I am alive to pay for it, and long after. If you have ever mocked her, apologize to her tonight, or leave my garden. If you have ever loved her, thank her. She is the reason I am standing here." Nia cried. She did not try not to. She had earned the tears. Camila, in the front row, shouted, "That's my sister," and everyone laughed, and Jinwoo, for the first time anyone present had ever seen, smiled a full, bright, unguarded smile. Later, when the guests had gone and the lanterns had burned low, Jinwoo and Nia sat together on the wide stone bench by the fountain in the garden. His arm was around her broad shoulders. Her head was on his chest. "The peonies smelled like heaven, Jinwoo," she said. "Yes, when you said that night by the window, 'Feed me your scraps and I will cure you.' What did you mean?" He was quiet a moment. Then he said, "I meant that I had been given everything in this life. Money, power, men who would die for me, and none of it had ever fed me. Then you came, with a bowl and a spoon, and you called what you brought me scraps, because you did not know your own value. And I understood, watching you set that bowl down, that the smallest true thing a good woman offers is worth more than every empire I had ever built. So I meant that if you would keep giving me your scraps, which are not scraps, I would spend the rest of my life curing every wound the world had ever put on you. I meant that I loved you. I did not know how to say it yet." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You said it now. Yes, I love you too." "I know." She laughed. He kissed the top of her head. The fountain murmured. The lanterns burned low. Somewhere in the house behind them, Sang was pouring himself a well-earned drink, and pretending not to look out the window at his brother and his new sister sitting in the garden. The silent king had learned to speak. The unseen gem had learned to shine. And a woman who had once thought she had nothing to offer but scraps had ended up feeding an empire, curing a king, and building a kingdom of her own. That was the story of Nia Bellamy and Jinwoo Han, and it began, as the best stories do, with a bowl of rice porridge, a spoon held in a steady hand, and a woman who refused to be smaller than she was.